Okay. So this is our cat. We have done everything we're going to do on the head and face for now. All right. So what we're going to do next is the neck of the cat. So to do the neck, what we're going to do is we're going to draw two shapes, and then we're going to basically just join those shapes. So what shape does a circle, like a circle, let me give you an example. Okay. A square is technically a rectangle, right? Yeah? Yeah?
Yes.
Like a square is a special kind of rectangle. So a circle is a special type of what shape?
That's here.
This is a two-dimensional shape.
Oh.
Ovals. We technically would call it an ellipse, but yes, right? Think about it, right? A rectangle, the two sides are not the same length, right?
Yeah.
Well, think of an oval as like kind of like a circle where the two sides, the vertical and horizontal, are not the same size, right? Okay. So we're gonna do this. We're gonna do this with ellipses. So on the back of the cat's head, I want you to sketch an ellipse. So how do you sketch an ellipse? Right here, there's a circle. You click the drop down arrow and we have ellipse. Yes, yeah, we're good?
Yep.
Now, to do an ellipse, okay, you're going to start with the center. So we'll put that on the origin. Doesn't have to be in the origin, but we're going to start on the origin, okay? That's the first click. Second click controls basically the radius in one direction. They technically call these axes when it's an ellipse, not a radius. And then the third click is the radius in the other direction. Again, they call these axes. The major axis is the bigger one. The minor axis is the smaller one. You can make this as big or as small as you want. That is not a circle, though. It is an ellipse. Okay? We good? Yeah? I have a neck. Well, I have half a neck. I got to draw the other half of the neck. So what I'm going to do here is, if you can envision this, I'm going to draw a shape out over here. This makes sense? I'm going to draw a shape out over here. And then I'm going to join the two. Okay, we good? Maybe, yeah? So the shape I'm going to draw is an ellipse, but it's not going to be the same size ellipse. You can do what you want with it. Maybe you make it bigger, smaller, narrower, tall, whatever. It is not going to be the same size of an ellipse, and it's not going to be lined up vertically either. Because think about it, a neck doesn't go straight parallel to the ground. Sometimes it kind of goes up a bit, right? So what I'm going to do here, in order to do this, I have to have something out here to draw on, and I don't. So I need to add something to draw on, and we're going to do what's referred to as a work plane. Okay? I'm going to something. So you have your circle. Click the green check mark. Okay? I'm going to put this at an angle because I think it's easier to see what's going on if it's at an angle. Right here, you should see the plane option or tool. Tool might be a better word. Right there. And there's actually a drop down arrow, and there's all these other things. That's quite complicated. But the first option is plane. We see it? Yes, yeah? And if you click on that, this allows you to create a plane wherever you want it. You got wrestling?
Yeah.
Hey, good luck, my dude.
I'm not wrestling.
You're not?
Hey, why aren't you wrestling?
Because, like, the bone in my elbow is, like, off.
Unfortunately.
You better get your elbow fixed, bro.
Bro, you don't even, like, when's the last time you've been to a wrestling practice?
I had one dude who took one of my physics books and was trying to smack a cyst out of his leg.
Left.
I had a
Yeah,
girl
but
who was like, can I borrow a trash bag so she could go run for 2 hours before weighing herself?
Are you couldn't literally just Saturday?
It's wild, dude. All right, so you should say plane one. Yes, say yeah. and it's just a blue and it says entities. Yes, yeah. Now, the drop-down list has all of these options, of which there's a lot. I want it to say offset. What should it say? Offset. If you have an offset plane, what that does is whenever you click on a surface, it just creates a plane parallel to it, and you choose how far it's offset. Okay? So I'm going to click on the back of the cat's head while this says offset, and poop, there's a plane. Now, how far it offset it? Well, that's what this number is. And you can manually drag this arrow to make it closer or further away. So however long you want the cat's neck to be, okay? But hopefully you can see here that if I draw on this plane and then I draw on this plane I'm about to make, I'm going to be able to connect the two. Do we have questions? Questions? We're good? Maybe? Yeah? All right. So there's that. And what we're going to do next is we're going to draw on this plane. We're going to actually draw on this plane. Now, I'm going to make a sketch on it. So make sure you click on the correct plane. The orange tells you what you're hovering over. We don't want it to be on the front plane that was already there. We want it to be on this new plane we just made. We see this? Yes, yeah? And you're going to click on it, and you're ready to draw on that plane. I would encourage you to use the view cube and get all squared up so we can see what's basically the front of the neck. We good so far? Yeah? Now what you're going to do is you're going to draw another ellipse. And this ellipse, you do you on how you want to do it, but I'm just going to put it kind of a little bit below. And I made it a little bit different shape and size. I wouldn't go crazy with it, but notice how these two are different. They don't line up horizontally. They line up this way. I guess maybe that's high. I guess it is line up horizontally. I guess they line up horizontally, but not vertically. Okay? So they're lined up like this. Their centers are both on this vertical line, but this one's a bit lower. We're good? Yeah? Do you have any questions before we move on? Okay? So I'm done with that sketch. The feature we're going to use is called the loft. I'm going to be real with you. This feature hardly ever gets used, but it's a really cool feature. It's probably one of the coolest features in CAD software, and it is right here. It's the one that looks like the smokestacks on nuclear power plants. We see it? Mm-hmm. You click on that. If it's going to work, it's very easy. Unfortunately, sometimes with shapes it doesn't work. But if it does work, very easy to do. It says profiles right here. It's expecting you to click on the things you're going to connect. I'm going to click on my circle or ellipse. I'm going to click on my other ellipse. And it joins them. Easy. Now, if you do more complicated shapes or have some other technical issues, this doesn't always work as nice. But when it does work, it works really well, really easy to do. And it allows you, it does maths, basically, to join two arbitrary shapes. Now, if you go crazy with those shapes, it might not work out so hot. But with, two things that are round, at least, it worked out pretty good. Do you have any questions? Before we move on, what are we going to go back and do? Yeah. We need to go name some stuff. So let's do that. So right here, I have sketch 1. That was the sketch for the neck on the back of the head. So I'm going to call that neck front. And then this sketch 2. Neck back. And I'm going to call this loft here neck. I'm even going to rename this plane. I'm going to rename this the neck plane. We good? Questions? Okay. We're going to do the body next. Before we do that, the body's going to be over here, and all these planes aren't really going to be a part of that. So you can hide them. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to hide these planes. And if I ever want them back, I can always bring them back. I'm not deleting them. But how do we hide things? Remember? Click on the eyeball. So you go over here, and you can hover over the item, and you can click the eyeball. Turn it on or off. And I'm going to turn this neck plane off. Now, I'm going to keep this right plane and the origin up just because my body is probably going to want to be like centered about that plane. But yeah, the other ones I can hide. Okay, we don't really need those anymore. And we're going to sketch on the bottom or back of this neck. Sound good? Yeah? We're going to sketch on that. And we're ready to go. I'm sketching on the back of this neck. You make the body whatever shape you want. I literally don't care. I'm going to make it a rectangle. So watch what I do here. If you do a corner-to-corner rectangle, very easy to do. But the problem with a corner-to-corner rectangle is that I am going to have to do some work to get this rectangle centered. Okay? So if you click the drop-down arrow next to the rectangle, there's this center point rectangle, which we've done before. You can click on that. Makes it easier to have a rectangle that's centered. We good? Yeah? Yeah. I would just do a rectangle. I'm not saying you have to do a rectangle, but I would encourage you to do a rectangle. Any questions so far? Okay. Well, we can now extrude that rectangle as far as we want. And we have a body for a cat. Should already know how to do an extrusion. That's something you should know how to do by now. I've done a few of those. But as a little reminder, when you're doing an extrusion, here's the extrusion feature. You click on it. It prompts you to choose what shapes you want to extrude.
Can I just go this way?
Yeah. And then you can choose the distance you extrude by either typing a number in here for the depth, or you can grab this arrow, drag it for whatever length you want. And now I have a cat body at least. Now, I don't know about you, but most cats that I've seen do not look like boxes. You know what I'm saying? So, something that you can do is you can round corners.
It's supposed to have a hole in it.
Huh?
Yeah.
No. When you are selecting it, you got to select both of those shapes. So you get to select outside the hole and inside the hole. 2 clicks. We good? Everything that's contained as a single shape, you have to do an individual click. Okay. So one of the most commonly used, I'm going to call this like a post-process feature. It's kind of something you do at the end. It's called a fillet. It's right here. So I'm done with sketches. So I'm seeing my features now. Right here is the fillet. We see it? Yeah? You click on that, and it's going to prompt you to select all the edges you want to fillet. The fillet is when you take an edge and you round it. And what's nice is that this does all of it automatically. You're going to see in a moment how this is really helpful. Okay? Just watch up here. All right? So let's say I want to fillet this edge. So I've chosen the fillet tool. It says entities of fillet. I click on this edge. And you can see how it's rounded that edge. We see that? Yeah? Now, you might ask yourself, well, why didn't you just do that in a sketch? You could have just rounded the corners of the rectangle in a sketch. And you would be right. I could have. However, what if I wanted to round all of the edges of the rectangle? Okay? Well, here's something that's kind of cool. instead of clicking the edge of a rectangle, I'm going to click an entire surface. And you'll see how it's filleted the entire surface. And I can click on all the surfaces of this rectangle, and now it's filleting all of them, which is really nice. We see that? They're all filleted. If you don't like the fillet, you can make it a bigger number. So I made it a bigger number. There is also somewhere, depends on where you filleted, but somewhere there will be an arrow you can click and drag to make your fillets less bad. Something to keep in mind with fillets. You can't fillet more material than you have to start with. So as an example, if a fillet has a radius of 10, I can't fillet something that's smaller than 10. I hope you appreciate that, right? If I fillet both sides of something and the fillet radius is 10, that something has to be 20 or bigger. Because if it was less than 20, when I fillet both sides, they're going to clash and they're not going to smoothly meet. Okay? So fillets, you can't just fillet any random number. But notice that these fillets allow me to round all the edges. I would not have been able to do that with an extrusion. Would not have been possible. So I've rounded all the corners and edges of my cat's body. Questions? We're good? Okay. What should we do before we move on? Name. So I'm going to name this. What will be a good name? Don't overthink this. There you go. Okay, I did not mean to type just bod, but I guess that would technically have worked. If you told someone they had a cat bod, what would that mean? The fillet, I'm going to rename body fillets. Okay, we're good? Maybe? Possibly? All right. Now, what do we want to do next? Leg or tails? Oh, okay, tail. We're not adding multiple tails. Sorry. Legs or tail? What do you want to do? Leg or tail? Tail. All right, we'll do the tail next. Okay, what we're going to do for the tail, so a cat's tail, you can imagine, might do something like this. It might kind of come off and and it's not like a straight out thing. It's not Pinocchio's nose, right? It might, kind of have some curl to it, right? You know what I'm saying? So what we're going to do is we're going to try and do that. Now, I don't really care the exact specifics on how you do this. I'm going to show you some options here. But in order to do that, you have to have a profile, and then you have to have a sketch where the profile knows what to follow. We call this a sweep. So I want you to think about piping, like plumbing, right? Imagine if you were to draw a line that indicates where the pipe goes, right? And then you were to draw a circle, and it would take that circle and just drag the circle all along the line, and you get a pipe. That's called a sweep. So the sweep feature, to kind of get an idea of what it looks like, it's right here. Okay. So what we're going to do is on the butt of the cat, we're going to draw a circle. Just draw a circle. I would center the circle. So notice where my cursor is. I've made a sketch on the butt of the cat. Notice the orange dots and the vertical auto constraint. So I've lined my cursor up with that plane. There's a reason why I left that plane and that origin visible, because I'm going to keep using it. And I'm going to just place the circle up. Ooh, that's not where I want it. I'm going to place the circle about where, I would put a tail. Okay, we good? Yeah? Yeah. Any questions with that so far? Okay, we're done. That's it. That's the profile. I'm hovering my mouse over it so you can see the orange circle. It's there. That's the profile for the cat's tail. Now what I got to do is I got to draw a sketch This is where like the circle is going to be dragged across. It's the path the circle is going to take to make the tail. And I'm going to let you do what you want with this, okay? But I'm going to show you something called a spline. It's a really complicated thing, but it's really, really cool. And I think you're really going to enjoy playing with it, especially later on when you make your own stuff. It just makes really cool looking things. So in order to draw the path, so the path is going to like come out of the body. So the path is actually going to get drawn on this plane. Okay? So this plane that would cut the cat's body in half is actually like where I draw the path. You ain't going, dude?
Well, I went to the wrong one.
Did you miss your bus already?
Yeah. Well,
I wasn't going to say
it was a
anything.
1 o'clock and a 1:45.
Yeah, I wasn't going to say anything, but I was like, I'm pretty sure they already left. But I just assumed that you knew more than me since you're actually on the team.
Wait, when is school?
In 20 minutes?
2:26?
2:22.
2:22, okay.
You said you're not wrestling today, for sure.
Oh, yeah, I'm not wrestling.
I mean, you could have someone drive you.
Yeah, I'm gonna not.
Normally, you can't do that because everybody has to arrive on the district transportation submission rule. But if you're not competing, then it doesn't matter. All right, I'm going to draw a sketch on this plane. Okay, now, I know that the right plane looks like it's just here. But I want you to be very clear on this. Planes are infinite. Even though visually it looks like you can only draw on this square, you can draw anywhere. Don't do this, but just to prove my point. I can draw a circle out here. Okay, and it's on that plane. You can see it's on that plane. You can draw anywhere on the plane. The rectangle is just like a visual indicator. Planes are infinite size. So I can draw on this plane, I can draw out here. And if I hover my mouse over, you can see, in fact, in orange, it's picking up on the center of the circle that I drew on the cat's butt. We see that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah? And that's important because I want my path to be at the center of that circle. So you could draw whatever you want. For example, you could just draw a line. You could just draw a line. It's coming out of the center of that circle. We see that? But I've drawn it on a plane that's basically perpendicular to the plane that circle is drawn on. And I could do a sweep of this. Here's a sweep feature right here. It's in between the revolve and the loft. I could do the sweep. And it says edges or sketch curves to sweep, and then it says sweep path. So the edges or sketch curves to sweep would be the circle. And then the sweep path would be the line. So I could do that. I could do that. So we understand what the sweep does. Now that you understand what it does, if you want to do a more fancy path, knock yourself out. I'm going to show you the spline tool. The spline tool is really cool. It's really complicated to use correctly, but it's really cool. So right here is the line tool. If you click the drop down arrow, oh, I lied. Ignore me. Over here is spline. Here's the spline tool. It looks like kind of some curvy stuff. We see that? Yes, yeah. Yeah. You can use the spline tool. There's different ways you can do it, but I would just go with the first one for now. Basically, the way a spline tool works is you click, and everywhere you click is like forming a curve. And if you want to end your spline, when you've placed the last point, you have two options. Okay, the first option, when you're done, So let's say that I'm done with my tail right now. You can either double click as you place the last point, or if you've already placed it and you want to end, you right click and you choose confirm spline, and then it just takes what you've already drawn. We understand? Yes, say yeah. So I got my spline there. And you can move these blue dots. They're like vertices of the spline. There's math behind how it uses those dots to make the spline, but you can move those blue dots if you want to shape it. And you can then use the sweep. And recall, for the sweep, edges and sketches, curves to sweep, you choose the circle. Sweep half, you choose that thing we drew. Looks kind of cool, doesn't it? Looks kind of cool. Now, one thing I want to point out with Onshape, you got to pay attention to the tabs. I don't know why mine defaulted to this. Maybe it's because the last time I used it, I'm not really sure. But do we see the tabs up here that say solid, surface, and thin? Do we see that? Make sure your sweep tab says solid. What should it say? I don't really know why surface was chosen. I don't know. But make sure that you have solid chosen before you actually commit to the sweep. We good? Yeah? If you don't, you may have noticed that mine was gray. I don't know if any of you noticed that. But you see how it's gray? You see that? And then also, do you see how it's like a tube? Yeah. It didn't actually sweep a shape. It swept a surface, which I don't really want. Okay? So make sure that you have the solid tab selected. And then, but it functions the same way. And if you don't like how the end is like this, if you don't like that, what could you do to round it?
Draw.
Huh? You could. That would be a thing you could do.
Fillet.
You could do a fillet. Could round it with a fillet like that. Now I got a little rounded tail. Looks kind of cute. Sort of. Okay, maybe not so much, but you get the idea. So my cat has a tail. I think the loft and sweep features are like some of the coolest things. For better or worse, you don't use them very often. But they are really cool. Do we have any questions about making that tail? Okay. What should we do before we move on? Name your things. Some of you maybe have gotten into a habit of naming them while you make them. So this would be, I'm going to call this the tail front. Or rather, I lied. Tail profile. Tail path. Tail. Tail end. Questions? Okay. Next thing I'm going to do is the legs. You ready to do the legs? You ready? Yeah? Yeah. Are you ready to do the leg? Where do you think we're going to draw the leg?
On like the bottom of it.
Probably, right? So I'm going to do this. I'm going to keep it simple. I'm going to draw a leg on the bottom. So make a sketch on the bottom. Where are we making a sketch?
On the bottom.
On the bottom. Okay. Now, I know that this is going to look weird, but I'm trying to show you different features, and so it is what it is. We're going to use a regular polygon. So I'm not going to nitpick which polygon you use, but don't use a circle, okay? So right here, you should see a pentagon. Do we see that? Yeah. If you actually click the drop-down arrow, there's two different ways, inscribed and circumscribed. You may recall from geometry class that you can have an inscribed or circumscribed shape. And basically, it's whether you put the circle around the shape or within the shape. That's the only difference. I wouldn't get too caught up in which one you use for this, but notice that you have both options. Okay? We're going to go with the first option. In order to draw a polygon, the first click that you do places the center of the polygon. The second click that you do controls the size. Hopefully you're noticing a trend here. Okay? Hopefully you're noticing a trend here. And the third click, you're not like moving any part of the shape. Just as you move your mouse back and forth, it actually controls how many sides there are. So the smallest polygon is a triangle. You can do a square. You can do a pentagon. What do we call 6?
Sexagon.
What's a 6-sided shape?
Hexagon.
Hexagon. What is a 7-sided shape?
Polygon.
Polygon general. It just means multiple sides. Septagon. What do we call 8? Octagon. What do we call 9? Nonagon. What do you call 10? I have no idea what 11 is. Weird. I don't know. I think 12 is like a dodecagon, or I don't even know, man. I'm going to go with 5. I'm going to do a pentagon. What shape am I doing? You do you. I really don't care. You want to do a hexagon? Do a hexagon. Knock yourself out. I think it seemed like the max was 50. But you can manually type in whatever number you want afterwards. So, I can double click here and I can make it whatever number I want later after this fact. Okay, now one thing that I would like to do is get this pentagon lined up. So you may recall constraints. Remember constraints? Yes, yeah? Remember those? So you can go to the constraints and you can do a horizontal or a vertical constraint, and you can force one of the edges to be aligned horizontal or vertical. You do you, but I force the bottom to be horizontal just to kind of get the point facing towards the front of the cat. I just lined it up. You can orient it however you want. I don't really care. But I'd use a constraint to reinforce some ideas here. Anybody here in HOSA? In HOSA, the student organization.
What's that?
Okay, well, if you don't know what it is, you're probably not in it. That's okay. All right. Now that we got that out of the way, we're done. We're done. We're going to extrude this leg. You ready? Pay attention. So I'm going to click on extrude, and I'm going to select the pentagon. Easy, problem solved. Now, you may have noticed that my pentagon went over the curve of the cat's body. Hopefully you see that. In fact, I'm going to make it go over the curve even more than it already does, just to show what I'm doing here. Okay? So my pentagon is well over the curve. So when I do my extrusion, what you're going to notice, aside from the fact that I have to click multiple times to select all these things, what you're going to notice is if I zoom in here, you can see, and I'll actually finish the extrusion. Do you see how it doesn't actually come all the way up to the body. Do we see that? Which is kind of ugly. All right? That's ugly. So when you're doing your extrusion, I want to show you something that's really useful. At this point, all the extrusions we've done are what's referred to as blind extrusions. They just blindly extrude whatever distance you tell it to. No matter what's going on in the world, it just goes that distance and then stops. But you can change that. You can change that. So I'm going to make it go a decent length. Okay? But what I'm going to also do is, if you notice here, do we see how it says second end position? Do we see that? Yeah? I can actually extrude in both directions. Now, the direction down, I like blind extrusion because I wanted to go a certain distance. But the direction up, I don't really, like, that's not a straight, flat edge. Like, there's no number I can put in there where it's going to extrude just up to and around that surface. So where it says blind, and I'm only doing this for the second end position, where it says blind, you can click the drop-down arrow, and you can choose what you want. I'm going to actually do up to next. And it will literally extrude it up to the next surface that it runs into. Okay?
Mine disappeared.
Oh, yeah. Unfortunate. Might have to choose merge with all. I don't know why it's being so goofy. Well, you can extrude it down. Yes, yeah. Yeah. And then you can extrude it again the other direction.
Yeah, no, that's not it.
That worked. I'll show you what I did. So the first extrusion, I just extruded down. We see that? Yes, yeah?
Yeah.
Now, you can cheese this. If you want to go to a second end position, you could choose blind and then just make sure you pick a number where it goes well into the body. You can cheese it like that. That is valid. However, if you want to do it more cleanly, what you can do is you can, after you've done this extrusion, you can go in and extrude again. You can go choose the tops of these little thingies sticking out. You see that? You can choose that if you want to try hard this. And you can choose, instead of blind, you can choose up to next. And we are done with the leg. We will pattern them, and then on Tuesday, there's no school Monday, we will do some purely cosmetic stuff. We'll do we'll stencil its name on there. We'll do some coloration, and we'll be done with our first thing.
Is it drag thing?